You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, episode 85. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Hello and welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions. This is episode number 85, and we're going to be talking about Gold Key Comics number 5, The Ghost Planet. I'm Craig.
And I'm Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff, here we are. We are back.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think the last Gold Key was a month ago, yeah.
Yeah, the last episode we did with Larry, I'm not sure how it came out for the folks listening, but I was on Skype on my phone. But now I'm here at my computer is set up at my desk, and I have Skype going, and everything's good, and I'm feeling like I am back in it.
Nice, the triumphant return of Mr. Craig Cohen.
Yes, and I also wanted to. I know I already complimented you and Claire on your first episode of your new series, but I just wanted to say it here on the show that I really enjoyed listening to that discussion about a piece of the action that you guys had.
Oh, thanks. I really appreciate you saying that. And we've been getting some really nice feedback from people online, some regular listeners and some new comments, some new people on Twitter. So we're very proud of what we've got out there, and we have an even cooler second episode in the works for you, which will be out next Friday.
Excellent. And one of the most exciting things that occurred to me when I was listening to the episode was that this brings us one step closer to the Chris Ritzer, Jeff Ferry DS9 podcast that we've both been demanding.
You know, that can't be far off at this point. In fact, I hope I'm not dropping any spoilers here, Mr. Chris Ritzer, if you're listening to this. I actually got together with Mr. Ritzer a little over a week ago, and I believe that there was some discussion about him possibly starting up some sort of a DS9 related show.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So look forward to seeing what comes of that idea. And I guess, Chris, if you are listening, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Yeah, get started on that, and I'm sure we would be more than happy to help you out in any way you need.
All right. So do you want to jump into this issue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that from Dagger of the Mind, at least the Kirk shot?
Yeah, the Kirk shot is from Dagger of the Mind, and the Spock shot is another Galileo 7 screen grab.
Yeah, they really loved mining those Galileo 7 shots.
Funny, and when they reissued a lot of these in the mid to late 70s, they went ahead and redid covers for them more appropriate to the content of the actual issue itself. So the later cover was a little more rainbow ring-ish, if you will. One of the things that really is a head-scratcher about these Gold Keys is the initial covers were just random shots from random episodes that had absolutely nothing to do with the story of the issue. So this one came out in September of '69. And again, writer Dick Wood. And Alberto Giolitti is the artist once again. Stardate 2606.4.
All right.
Yeah, cover blurb is Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock save a planet from extinction but are doomed by its war-mad leaders. Dun, dun,
yeah,
dun.
And that's one thing. This issue really sort of jettisons any other characters from the series. McCoy is referenced or maybe seen once or twice, but aside from that, there's no Scotty, there's no Sulu, there's no Chekhov. It really, this issue really sort of drove home the fact that they were really just writing Kirk and Spock stories.
Yeah, this is the Kirk and Spock show for sure. And I think the only other crewman besides, McCoy is name dropped for sure once, and the only other named crewman is a guy named Denton, who's part of the away team. So, yeah, this is very Kirk and Spock heavy. But I have to say that Shatner, the likeness of Shatner is a little bit better in this issue than it has been in the past. So I was happy to see that in most of the panels anyway. There was a few that were a little bit off. But, of course, Spock looks very Nimoy-ish as he has in the previous issue. So
Right.
All right, listeners. So we will give you the countdown to the spoilers. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, you haven't read this, you want to read it yourself, go ahead and stop us now and pick us up after you're done. So we're going to start talking about the story in 3, 2, 1. So once again, the Enterprise is moving in deep space towards galaxy Zelta and encounters a strange rainbow-colored ringed area of space. And Spock discovers that the rings are composed of a copper-like substance and they are encircled around a planet. Kirk, of course, as he's done in previous issues, orders the ship closer.
Yes.
Kirk is he's a little concerned that the copper content of the rings may pose some kind of danger to the ship, but Spock, of course, reassures him that the Enterprise will not be affected by said rings. They encounter some turbulence going through the rings, and Spock references the fact that they must go to a depth of 2 lunar miles before they're completely through.
Yeah, and he also tells them to secure their seatbelts.
Yeah. Yeah, that another strange reference to something that we know doesn't exist on the Enterprise, because we always see them getting thrown around on the bridge. But finally, a planet comes into view and the turbulence stops. Spock detects some sort of radioactive impulses from the planet's surface, but can't pinpoint any source or any life on the planet whatsoever. And they just find a big empty city, so they decide, of course, to beam down and investigate Kirk, Spock, and 2 security guards. So we'll stop here and discuss this beginning part of the story. Now, Craig, to me, this feels a lot like some of the previous issues we've already talked through.
Yeah, it seems like they're very just planet-centric, but also planets that are in some form of global distress.
Yeah, that does seem like a recurring theme, but one thing I will say in the comics' defense that I think we've often lamented about the show is, at least in the comics, they do seem to be exploring strange new worlds.
Yeah. You could definitely say that.
I guess the writer got that part down, so I like that. So, and another thing that I found very strange, and this has been in a lot of the previous issues as well, is that you see the outside of the ship looks perfect. All the time, all the panels where they draw the Enterprise, it looks just like the model from the TV show. But again, we have Kirk and Spock in some sort of a control room inside the ship that is definitely not the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, actually, the one shot there, it looks like that might be even engineering.
It could be. There's a lot of analog-looking equipment in there. Big monitors with wireframes drawn on them and communication-looking consoles. And it looks like a very crowded room where the bridge is much more sparse. Not quite sure what that's about. I'm curious to see what issue we need to get to before the actual bridge shows up. So we're 5 issues in and still no bridge. They also refer to the ship as the Queen Ship of the Starfleet.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, I thought it usually was the flagship, but I guess the Queen Ship works too. So you mentioned the seatbelts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's another one of those weird terminology things. And I don't think, have we ever seen any sort of buckling devices on the show?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it seems like it would be something that that would be very necessary.
One would think, and even in the other series, I don't recall seeing buckles in the seats. Did they have buckles in the seats in Enterprise?
You'd know better than me.
Technically before.
Yeah.
But so I guess seatbelts were never necessary, even though there had to be so many on-the-job injuries on the Enterprise with people falling from their seats and being tossed around the bridge.
Yeah, but you could also probably make an argument that a seatbelt might impede you. Especially on an active bridge where you might need to jump out of your seat in a second's notice. Being hampered by a seatbelt might be a problem.
So, Nate, one thing that stuck out to me, and I know you like to point this stuff out too, is that I think Kirk takes a kind of another Spock-like role here in the beginning, where he's questioning whether or not the copper is going to affect the ship. Do you think Kirk would really ask that type of a question?
Yeah, it definitely seemed a little out of character. I also like the fact that Kirk used or Spock used the word reconnoiter.
Yeah, that's another good one. There's so many strange writing choices as far as the terminology that's used in the slang. There's another one coming up later that I have written down that I'll point out. I'm sure you picked up on it too, but I won't jump ahead to that point just yet. And notice that the landing party beams down with utility belts and backpacks again.
Yeah, that's one aspect I really dig because it makes sense.
Yeah, it feels more realistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't do that more on the show. In fact, they never bring down much equipment with them besides a phaser and a communicator. You would think they would need some sort of rations or something if they were going on a kind of a longer excursion. But
Oh, yeah.
so moving along, so they arrive, the landing party arrives in the middle of a deserted city. This is similar to, again, to some of the prior issues. And an automated voice welcomes them and sends a robot-controlled vehicle to pick them up and take them to a communications building where they're led by more robots into a room with a large viewing screen. And the images of two guys appear, and they introduce themselves as Justin and Justin, the twin supremes of the planet numero uno. Justin number one, they actually call themselves Justin 1 and 2. So Justin 1 tells the landing party about a disaster that plagued their planet one lunar sun ago. The rainbow rings inexplicably moved in on the planet and wound up causing some bodily issues for them. The radiation that was emitted from the rainbow rings caused their bodies to decay and eventually would have become extinct. So to avoid becoming extinct, they built two large satellites and moved the population off the planet to live on the satellites. However, as one would think, the satellites became overpopulated and there wasn't enough food to feed everybody. So Justin 1 asks Kirk to help by destroying the rings. Spock says that it might be possible for the Enterprise to pull the rings away magnetically, since they are made of copper, and jettison them into deep space. So, but he will need some time for those calculations that he's always so famous for. And so the Justins thank the landing party for their assistance and will make contact in another lunar hour. So another good stopping point here. And I'm just going to throw right out there, planet numero uno. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, a little too on the nose, huh?
Yeah, that seems a little strange to me. I know we've had weird planet names before. This is not something that we haven't seen in Gold Key yet. But this is, I think they're getting a little too lazy.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, though. The artwork is far from lazy.
Oh, yeah.
The robot design, I really, really like. And also the ship that they take on the surface of the planet. Some really cool design there.
Yeah, absolutely. The robots, I was going to bring that up too. Glad that you did. They're very, very 60s robot-like.
Yeah.
So they reminded me of other sci-fi movies and shows that existed around that same time. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Gort from the Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So he's kind of cool. They had that kind of big, clunky, steel robot look. Very, very cool. And I think there's some really cool looking, all the shots of the Enterprise in this look really good to me.
Oh, yeah, totally. There's earlier in the issue, there's that one like 2-panel page where you have a majority of the page is just the Enterprise from a top view, or it's flying sideways. Very, very cool, where you see the full saucer.
Yeah, very, very cool. And the panel below that is kind of a long, thin panel, and it shows the Enterprise flying away from you, so you see the backs of the nacelles towards the really cool looking shots. So let's see. What about these nondescript measurements of time? The lunar hour and the lunar sun, and I'm not sure. Are those supposed to be like universal terms? Kirk and Spock know what lunar hours are.
Yeah, and they even refer to 2 lunar miles.
Yeah, I don't. It's a measure of distance and a measure of time.
Yeah.
Good pickup. This is another one of those head scratchers. Maybe this is that universal language of Esperanto kicking in again.
Yeah.
Where that lunar designation means something to everybody who knows Esperanto.
Yeah.
So maybe we're not actually speaking English here.
Well, they do point it out, actually, don't they? Don't they point out that they're speaking the international or the universal language of Esperanto?
That was one thing I actually remember liking when the first time that they brought that up, because it kind of ties up a lot of loose ends for me why everyone speaks English. So, another thing, the name Justin seems like a really strange choice to me. The name of the planet is Italian. and the name Justin is derived from a Latin name. So it just seems very strange. Maybe this is another Esperanto thing.
Yeah.
Maybe Esperanto has some Italian mixed in and some Latin as well. But I don't know. I'm sure that if you were able to talk to the writer and ask him where the name Justin came from, it was probably his kid or brother's kid or his sister's kid or something like that, or his father's name or something.
Oh, totally.
In there. So it just seems so random after naming the planet numero uno. So part 3, moving on. One of the security guards summons Kirk and Spock to another corridor and points out that there is a door that is guarded by 2 or more of these robots. The robots will refuse to let anyone pass, and as they test their limits, the robots attack the landing party and grab one of the security guards in a hold. And in order to free him, Spock comes up with an idea, and this is kind of cool actually, of emptying the water from their canteens on the feet of the robots, and then using some batteries from Spock's transistor to electrocute them. So it's a pretty neat move. And behind the door, they discover there's a war room that holds tons of weapons and some top secret files containing some photographs that depict the Justins engaged in deadly war with each other. And there's some death tolls that are extolled there, and it's almost 500,000 dead people from this war. So
yeah, and this page actually really feels like a shot right out of an episode of the show.
It kind of does. It kind of does. You're getting this expose through pictures and data and evidence that they uncover. This it kind of explains why they had 2 separate space stations, right? So they sent Justin 1's people to one and Justin 2's people to the other. And Kirk surmises that once the rings have been removed, the Justins will continue to fight against each other and eventually annihilate themselves. So he decides that he's going to organize a summit meeting aboard the Enterprise between the 2 Justins. So another good stopping point here. And here is where I'm going to drop the other Spock strange dialogue bit. And Spock actually wants to give the robots the hot foot.
Yes.
Another head scratcher bit of writing there. But I guess it gives these gold keys a little bit of their charm, right? Yeah, and the named crewman Denton is in this bit as well. His name comes out with the robots. So no idea. He's not someone that we've seen on the show before, so must have been somebody that they made up. So what do you think about Kirk and Spock wanting to get into that door? Do you really think that's something they would care about after the previous discussion? Wouldn't they want to go back to the ship and start doing the calculations to, how to get the rings to separated from the planet? Instead, they're wondering what's behind a guarded door.
Yeah, but at the same time, I can kind of see Kirk not liking the fact that he might, somebody might be putting one over on him.
I mean, I guess I could see that perspective. I'm just, looking back on what they've seen so far. I mean, there was no aggression. The Justins seemed to explain a perfectly believable story about what happened to the planet and seemed to legitimately be asking for help or in need of help. And I don't know, I just thought it was a strange segue from, here's the situation to, ooh, we have a mystery door guarded by robots. I mean, it could have been, somebody's office, or, what if it was the bathroom?
They're guarding the golden toilet.
Yeah, maybe Justin was in there, relieving himself, and the robots were there to keep somebody else from kind of wandering in. Just seems strange to me, but I can buy your theory. And once again, Kirk offers to play the diplomat. I kind of thought that was an interesting approach. Instead of just saying, what the hell with these guys, let's just get out of here. After seeing the evidence of what they've done, Kirk decides he's going to step in and try to fix things. I don't know. And especially seeing what his potential solution is in the next section, it just kind of made me, raise an eyebrow and wonder, well, let's move on to the next part, and unless you have anything else.
No, let's go.
So the Justins arrive on the Enterprise, and Kirk immediately accuses them of having deceived the landing party and throws the pictures on the table, kind of in a very CSI manner. And
and this is for the summit meeting in space. I love the fact that it's announced with such they're so excited to announce it.
Yeah. So anyway, the Justins are a little bit taken aback, and they draw their weapons, but are quickly disarmed by Mr. Spock, not the security team, but Mr. Spock. They admit that they've been at war, and Kirk comes out and says that he believes it would be best to let the civilization die out rather than help them continue the war. So this is what I was kind of referring to before. If this was Kirk's plan all along to let them die, why would he even bother?
Yeah.
Just fly away. But anyway, so the Justins beg for help and insist that they'll stop their warring ways if the Enterprise will remove the magnetic copper rays, and they even offer to let Kirk leave behind some sort of camera system, or visual detectors as they call them, to make sure that nothing nefarious is going on after the Enterprise leaves. Kirk agrees, and Spock prepares to remove the copper rings from around the planet. The Enterprise uses its magnetic generators on the rings. However, there's not enough power to draw the rings away. Spock redirects some electronic rifles at the magnetic fields of the other orbiting space stations and makes some sort of an extra power boost, and it works, pulling the rings away from the planet. So, again, I'm just hearkening back to what I said a minute ago. If Kirk really intended to let that civilization die, why did he bother holding the meeting in the first place?
I guess he wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Or either that, or maybe he just wanted to give them a piece of his mind. But I thought it was interesting, though, that Spock is very Spock-like here, and he actually convinces Kirk to change his mind, saying that the Enterprise's duty was to help planets, right? Which I don't know if that was ever really the Enterprise's mission, was it?
No.
Of course, no mention of the Prime Directive. This is a perfect place for the Prime Directive to have been applied, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, there's a little too much interference here. But again, we're still disconnected quite a bit from the show. So I have a feeling that we're probably not going to get kind of wrapped back into what was really going on the show until the writer changes, because these have all been the same guy who wrote these. So let's see. Oh, parts 1 and 2 of the comic have the same title in this issue.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, we're in the last few, they had different titles. Or
which I thought was kind of neat.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. It was almost like you felt like you were reading a two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like two separate comics in one. But did you notice that the phasers in this issue look pretty similar to the ones on the show?
Yes.
Yeah, a little more cylindrical in the top piece, but still same form. So that was kind of cool to see some more things getting closer to their show counterparts. And, here, one of my big questions here in this part, and maybe you can help shed some light on this because you've been putting out some good theory so far, my weird questions, but why wouldn't the Enterprise security team disarm the Justins when they beamed aboard?
Oh, I don't have an answer for that.
Like they let them carry their pistols with them into the summit meeting. That just seems really weird to me.
Oh, no, totally.
There's no protocol for something like this. I mean, we've seen Kirk disarm people on the show that came on board the ship. You weren't allowed to carry just, weapons. If you were an unknown person or unknown alien from another world, you wouldn't be able to just kind of bring your weapon with you and shoot it off wherever you felt like.
Oh, totally.
But, thankfully Spock had a quick draw and was able to disarm them. So on to the next part of the story. They are the Enterprise is successful at removing the rings from the planet, and the Justins prepare to return, but Kirk tells them to hold off while they test the area for some dangerous leftover copper content, which could be deadly to them.
Yes.
So, again, Kirk, Spock, and 2 security guards transport down to the planet with some testing equipment, and Spock finds no radiation, but no copper, but he does find atomic radiation coming from a huge stockpile of nuclear weapons that are stored inside a mountain pass area. Yeah. So the stockpile, and of course, this is the weird part. The stockpile is separated into 2 distinct areas. One is marked the property of Justin 1, and the other is the property of Justin 2. So their arms were all stored together. What does that mean?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like they're playing at war instead of really being at war.
Yeah, and people are actually dying. So are these guys just waging war for the fun of it? So having their warlike ways exposed, the Justins get pretty ticked off, and they come down in ships from their space stations to eliminate Kirk and Spock and the rest of the landing party. And this is one of those situations where I can't believe the Enterprise didn't intervene.
Yeah.
But Kirk calls for the Enterprise to beam them up, but in true show fashion, the transporter is jammed by electronic field, which is pretty cool, actually. I like the fact that they used that. And the Justins land their ships and start to make way towards the landing party, and everybody's trapped by laser fire behind some rocks. So, transporter's jammed. So we're getting some similar mechanics to the show. Do you think that was purely coincidental that he came up with that? Or do you think they actually had some more insight into things that were going on the show?
I think that was just coincidental in the sense that writers are always looking for ways to not let our heroes off easy.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, I guess everything we've seen so far, it doesn't lend itself to the writer having an extensive knowledge of what had gone on the show. I was kind of hoping that it would, but it's kind of a fun parallel. So another one that I thought was interesting too is the landing party this time beams down with phaser rifles that look all lot like the ones from the pilot. Yeah, the one that Kirk brought down to fight Gary Mitchell with.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
Spock kind of beams down with almost looks like a portable DJ kit.
yeah, it's a Geiger counter that hangs around his neck with a strap. Looks like it might be a little heavy.
Yeah.
Around your neck, but yeah, it does kind of look like a DJ scratching record player, right?
Yeah. And I also, just to back up a little bit, I also really like the sequence where they're removing the rings.
Yeah, that was very well drawn.
Yeah, and I think that was something I sort of visualized in my head and said, "Wow, that would have been a really great to see in maybe even one of the movies. Something with that scale. Just really, really cool."
That's another one of those things that I felt like if they were to take some of these comics and actually turn them into, Star Trek Continues episodes or something that would be really cool to see. I mean, that's something with today's special effects could be done really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
Tons and tons of color and kind of a cloudy mix. And I think that would be really neat to see the ship using some of those strange instruments that they have in the comics
right on,
to do this. But good point. So Kirk, a little strange dialogue bit. Kirk says, "Great space ghosts." I wonder if that was a reference to Space Ghost.
Yeah.
Probably not, but more strange. And another thing that kind of stuck out to me was that the Justin ships look like airplanes.
Oh yeah,
they look like regular old, military airplanes, or actually kind of reminded me of the Scientology Xenu story with the DC-10 space planes. I don't know, but it kind of stuck out to me that they actually had looked like airplanes that flew down from the orbiting satellites down to the surface. So we are getting ready to wrap the story up. We're in the final phase here. So Spock comes up with a story or a way to get them out of this situation. And they radio up to the ship. And Spock tells Dr. McCoy to play back the films of the ring moving operation. So into the atmosphere of the planet.
Yeah, we're talking super, super, super HD here.
Yeah, so the Justins look up in the sky and see the rings, or what they think are the rings, have returned. And Spock tells them that the Enterprise has discovered the secret of the rings and can make them return at any time. So, which is interesting because it's a lie, and Spock is saying it. But the Justins throw away their guns and agreed to let their weapons be destroyed by the Enterprise landing party. And the Enterprise moves on after placing monitoring satellites around the planet. So, yeah. Happy ending. The nuclear war is averted.
I'm not sure how long it's going to be averted for, though. It seems to me like the Justins would find a way to get back into business, eventually. And who's monitoring them? Is Kirk checking in every once in a while, or is there somebody assigned to that?
I guess. I mean, maybe those satellites they left relay information back to Starfleet Command. I guess Kirk would have to tell them exactly what they're doing. But doesn't that kind of feel like some really serious interference in the way?
Totally.
I mean, what business is it of Kirk's?
Yeah.
What that planet does. If they want to kill themselves, why is it? Kirk's decision to not let them do that.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no,
or Starfleet's. Very weird. But on the final page, panel 2, Is a cool shot of Kirk with that phaser rifle. Looks almost like it could have come right out of the pilot.
Yeah, it almost looks like that famous promo shot.
Yeah, it kind of does. Kind of does. So can we talk for just a second about the fact that the Enterprise recorded or took films of those rainbow bands and then somehow has projectors on the outside of the ship so that it can project that film onto the atmosphere of the planet?
Yeah, I mean, these would have to be incredibly, incredibly powerful projectors.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and also, to create a convincing facsimile of the of what they were used to seeing. It's one of those moments where I was able to suspend my disbelief, though.
Yeah, it sounds like an awful Star Trek thing to do. I mean, I think if they pulled that off on the show, they would have to do some sort of, reconfiguring of the deflector dish to act as a conduit for that image to be projected. And
yeah, or even show it on a monitor or something.
Yeah, they could explain it away, but I guess in the comic there's limited space, and I guess they can't really get that into how things are being done. I mean, you can't fit too much dialogue in there, but interesting concept nonetheless. So, that brings us to the end of the story, and the Enterprise has left to pursue another mission, and they'll be back in the next issue next Sunday. But do you have any closing remarks on Gold Key issue number 5?
No, I mean, it was as frustrating as the plots seem to be in terms of how sort of redundant they are. I thought this issue had enough sort of forward momentum to keep my attention the entire time I was reading it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The story moved along pretty well. I like the mystery in the middle where they have to discover what the real deal is, and I like that reveal. I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like the machinery that they drew as well. There's some really cool looking vehicles and weapons that are in there. So more of that really cool artwork. So I guess to wrap it up, I'll give this a non-canon, non-essential. Like the rest of the issues so far, except for one. I've only given one essential vote. So for me, this would be a non-canon, non-essential. So nothing really major, nothing really added, nothing that would make me say that you probably should read this to find some new information or some interesting facts about any of the characters. So
yeah, I mean, unless you're concerned about seatbelts, there's really nothing in this issue to warrant it being essential.
Yeah. All right, so that wraps up Gold Key number 5, The Ghost Planet, and we will see you guys next week. By the way, you can reach us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Tricorder Transmissions, Twitter TTT_pod. My personal Twitter is J_Benj, BENJ, and Craig, yours is?
Mr. Craig Cohen.
All right, so we will be back next Sunday with another episode of the Gold Key Comics, and we will see you all then.